So, with my classic collection, I kind of began to feel like I didn't have enough Peter Davison. I mean, some of some of the Doctors I've really begun to amass quite a lot of. I mean, I've got five stories from William Hartnell's era, seven each from John Pertwee's and Tom Baker's era, but strangely, I felt I didn't really have enough from Peter Davison's era. So, to remedy that, the latest story in my classic collection was Black Orchid, a two-part story broadcast on the 1st and 2nd of March 1982, and the fifth serial of season 19. Also the fifth story for the Fifth Doctor in general. That fits. Now, I kind of expected when I got this one to be one that wasn't particularly kind of revered as one of the greats, but I just decided to get it just because I wanted to. But when I asked kind of what people actually thought about it, people actually were saying they actually thought it was a very good episode. It was a very good story. And it provided something of a nice emotional break in between the two kind of big emotional stories of The Visitation and Earthshock. While I can't speak for The Visitation, I do know what happens in Earthshock, and yeah, maybe something lighter like this would be best to before you go into something heavy like that. So, what's the basic story? Well, you got the Fifth Doctor, played once again by Peter Davison. He and his companions Adric, Tegan, and Nyssa, played once again by Matthew Wardhouse, Janet Fielding, and Sarah Sutton, they arrive at a railway station on Earth in the year 1925, where they are mistaken for someone who has been called in to take part in a cricket match. The Doctor volunteers quite happily and plays a very good game of cricket before he is invited up to the manor house by Lord Charles Cranley, played by Michael Cochrane. All three are invited up there, and Lord Cochrane, his mother, Lord Cranley, invites them up there, and Lady Cranley, played by Barbara Murray, insists they all stick around for the grand ball that they have every year. They also meet up with Lord Cranley's fiancée, named Anne Talbot, who is also played by Sarah Sutton, and in the episode they do remark on how similar Anne and Nyssa end up looking. So for the grand ball, which is fancy dress of course, Anne gets two identical costumes and suggests that she and Nyssa have a little game, have a little joke, and see if anyone notices. Now, she also provides the Doctor with a Harlequin Jester costume, but while the Doctor ends up getting lost in the house, the costume ends up stolen, and the Harlequin Jester ends up kind of attending the party before getting quite rough with Anne and then seemingly murdering some of the house staff. So much so that when Anne kind of sees the Doctor now dressed in the Harlequin costume after finding his way back to his room and putting it back on, she immediately accuses him of being the murderer. It's up to the Doctor and his friends to find a way to show that he is innocent. Now, I will admit with this particular story, I was able to work out who the murderer was fairly quickly. I mean, okay, spoilers from this point on. If you don't want to know the big plot of this episode, the big kind of twist of it, then turn off here, go and watch the story for yourself, and then come back. Or if you don't mind having spoilers, feel free to stick around. Now, when they mentioned fairly early on that they did have an older son who was a botanist and is now sadly dead, I began to suspect, yeah, I bet he's the villain, especially when they had seemingly the person who steals the Doctor's costume and they didn't show his face. I began thinking to myself, yeah, I bet that's the son and he's not actually dead. And yeah. It turns out that the Black Orchid in question, which they do introduce fairly early on in, well, about halfway through in part 1, the son was a botanist and he found that in America, or in a part of America, and he brought the Black Orchid home. However, there had been a tribe, and that's where he found the Black Orchid, and this tribe, they thought of it as sacred, so when he took the Black Orchid, they savaged his face and cut out his tongue. And he was eventually brought back home by a Native American of another tribe, and this one is called Latoni. He's played by Ahmed Khalil in the episode. And the son is ultimately played by Gareth Milne, who, now, once again, he doesn't actually talk throughout the entire thing, he just kind of makes guttural noises due to the fact that in the story he isn't supposed to have a tongue. But again, after seeing the portrait and hearing these dead, and then seeing this figure kind of going around making moaning noises, I thought, yeah, that's gotta be the son who's under there, and it's not actually. Yeah, but once again, this was actually a story I thought was legitimately enjoyable. And people also said that this was the first purely historical story since The Highlanders in 1966, which I was a bit surprised by. I always thought, oh come on, Doctor Who has to have had at least one purely historical story since that time, but apparently not. The only alien elements that really appear in this story are the Doctor, his companions, and the TARDIS. Which, that's a very nice touch. Also, I personally, while watching this episode, compared it a lot to one of my personal favourite New Who episodes, The Unicorn and the Wasp, which is actually, I think, a fair comparison, minus the giant wasp, of course. I mean, it's the 1920s, it's a decent murder mystery, and the ultimate reason why the family doesn't want to get involved is that they don't want to hurt their social status, which is a nice touch. Also, it shows that Sarah Sutton really can act, having to juggle both personalities of Nissa and Anne, and yeah, I thought it was a nice touch. I will say that, as I said, I do think that the plot was a little predictable, but you know what? It's still a good plot, and you know what? I'm happy I got Black Orchid. So, yeah, I feel it's fairly easy to guess who the murderer is, but you know what? That doesn't mean it's still not an enjoyable story. So, Black Orchid. That's my latest one. Will be the next one? Well, I've got a decent idea of which story or stories I want to try and get next, but I'll let you know if things plan out. Anyway, until then, see ya.